All right. Next, scenarios. With data tables, we could look at two different inputs, try a whole bunch of different inputs, right? With either grades or interest rates or whatever, and that sort of stuff. With GoalSeek, we could vary one thing, but sometimes we want to make more nuanced what-if analysis, like a whole bunch of things could happen in the next year. And we want to, build a scenario, a case for when everything goes our way, another case when things don't go our way, our best guess about what we think is going to happen in the next year, next quarter, whatever we're projecting for, and stuff like that. So again here, I've got a simple income statement, even simpler than the other one, but it's got this stuff in it, right? And things are going to go up and down. And so over here, these are the things that I have a feeling are going to change in the next year. Okay. Units sold could go up, could go down, who knows, but we can make some estimates about what we think is going to happen. Labor costs are certainly going to have to rise because that's beneath the minimum wage at this point. Material costs, we might find a cheaper supplier, we might have to pay more for our materials in the future, and so on and so forth, right? So I've got a lot of different things that I think can change in the coming year. And I would like to build a little report out of this, make it easy for people to understand all these different scenarios. So you build your model, like I've done here. Here's my model. Here's my inputs. Generally speaking, you want your inputs separate from your model. It makes it a little bit easier to do this kind of stuff. So I've done that. Okay. Hard part's done. Data tab. What if analysis? Let's try that again. What if analysis? Scenario manager. You're going to have a series of scenarios attached to each sheet in the workbook. They're stored in a special location. The only place you can see them is through this guy here. So anyway, we don't have any at this point. So just click on Add and give it a name. I'm just going to call this one Current, Current Base Present, something like that, just so that people know what you're talking about. Okay. Then down here, changing cells. In here, you're going to want to put the cells that you think, the different inputs that might change in the next year. So I'm just going to pick the first one, comma. Don't use a range here. Pick each one individually, and then the second one, comma, third one, comma, fourth one. Okay? So these are things that are going to change in my various scenarios. Then I just go OK. And it grabs the values that are in those cells right now, which is fine because I want to preserve the current state of things. So that's good. OK. Then we can add other scenarios. Let's build a best case, right? Things go our way. So we can call it best or optimistic. Let's call this optimistic. I'm going to call it I'm just going to use opt for optimistic. All right. I'm feeling good about life. Things are going to go my way. Okay. By changing maybe to some of those cells, we'll just say OK here. Now, here's where you start changing stuff. All right. Demand's going to go up. 50% increase in demand, so that would be like 15,000. Okay. Now, even though this is optimistic, I know that my labor costs have to go up because minimum wages increased to $7.50 in this state. Is that right? $7.50? Anybody know? Close enough. Is it 9 something? I don't. Let's call it $7.50. Let's just pretend. All right. In the state of Livonia, it's $7.50. So in here you'd put $7.50. Right. Anyway, you just put in numbers here that you think are reasonable, right? Reasonably good. And then material costs. Then let's say they stay the same, and we found a new advertising agency that'll charge us less. So let's drop that down to 20,000, and so on. Right? You've sat down, you've thought about this, you've talked to people in your company, you've done the research, and now you're just plugging in the numbers you think that are reasonably optimistic. And then you say okay, and then of course, things could go wrong. So generally speaking, you'll make a pessimistic one. So again, we can just say add here. It's just the same sort of routine. I'm just going to call this one PES for pessimistic. Okay. So here, maybe demand slips to 8,000, and labor costs do go up to 950. They passed yet another minimum wage, and material costs go up to 415, 4.15, and we've got, and lucky us, we get to keep the same marketing budget, and so on, right? So these are things that could go wrong in the next year, and so on. And you can add as many of these as you want. So you can, generally speaking, you'll have one that preserves the present state, one where things go your way, one where things don't go your way, and then something like, here's my best guess, here's my most realistic estimate of what's going to happen next year. But then you can have as many variations on that as you want. Okay. Now, what does this get you? Well, it gets you two things. The first thing, you can pick one of these things and just click on the show button down here, and it changes these numbers here, and you can see what happens here. So you can use this to toggle between those different scenarios to see what's going on, right? So there's my pessimistic one, and if I want to set it back to current, I would just pick that, and I would just go show that. It'll just reset everything to that, okay? So that's got some use to it. But the place where this really comes in nice is there's a summary button down here. And just go ahead and click on that. And you're going to want to pick the summary scenario, or the scenario summary. Result cells. And here you can track more than one cell. If you wanted to keep track of your gross profits and say your labor costs or whatever, or your expenses and income, you could do that sort of stuff by just picking one. And let's just say, for instance, we're interested in tracking both income, comma, and our gross profit. So again, you just picked like that, right? And then just go OK. And it's going to create a new sheet in your workbook. It's just an ordinary sheet that's been formatted heavily. And it creates this little summary table for us here. Okay. And I've got this current values and current are the same, so I can get rid of one of those two columns. Like that. And this H6, that was units sold. Again, that's just a cell in there. So I would come back in here and put an English label on this, or a text label, so that when people look at this table, they'll know what's going on there. Like that. And I would do the same for all of these. Here, I would go ahead and supply them with a name so that this table meant something. Because, look, this week you'll remember what those mean, but if you come back to this a week later, you're not going to remember. And just dress it up a little, and you got your summary sheet. And now you can see, okay, here's the current thing. We're making $25,000. No, down here, let's see. What's D16? That's gross income, right? And so on. Okay. So currently we're making $45,000. If we have a really good year, we could go up to $87,000. And if we have a bad year, we could actually end up losing $17,000. And so on. And so for each scenario you create, it's going to create another column in this table for you. And you can look at it and stuff. And it's also it's an outline form, so you can collapse this stuff if you want to. Like that. And you can put, same sort of stuff here that we learned back when we were doing subtotal grouping. So it gives you a nice little summary table of all your different scenarios. That's all it does. But it gives you a lot more flexibility than either data tables or GoalSeek in terms of how many different inputs you want to mess with. Questions about this guy? Okay, so on the next sheet is your chance to do this stuff. Where'd it go? P4. There we go. Here's your model. It's a monthly income for somebody, and they're trying to figure out, they got various expenses here and how much money's left over at the end of each month. There's your income and stuff like that. So what I want you to do is to create 3 scenarios plus the current one. So here's my realistic estimate of what's going to happen in the next year in terms of my own income budget, and then best case and a worst case, and then create a report off of that. All right? So go ahead and work on that.
you.